has to roll
Let it
tonight.
roll.
Has to roll tonight.
Oh, it's coming back. Don't worry.
here
Don't
we go.
worry. It's coming back. Good. There.
Lead up.
Woo. Woo.
Has to
This
be.
one
This
feels
isn't a cutoff night.
This one feels good. This one feels much better than how last game went. But what's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Celtics Talk Weekly Postgame Show. I am your host, Rob Atanj. Right with me is the man, my co-host, Seamus Zarlingo. Guys, the Celtics tonight, they got back after in the Windy City, guys. 123-98, Seamus. The Celtics, a much different game, like I said earlier, than we saw just Thursday night back at the TD Garden. The Celtics got whatever they wanted. We got a lot to dive into. The Jason Tatum performance, that was historic. I mean, it was amazing. Much better vibes all around. So you know the drill here. Your initial thoughts, reactions, and takeaways on this win tonight.
This feels like the game that should have happened at the Garden the other night. The Celtics went back and forth with the Bulls the entirety of last game on, Thursday night, I believe it was. And the Bulls made an audacious fourth quarter run, 35-22 run in the fourth quarter, including a 10-0 run at the beginning of the fourth quarter when Jason Tatum was off the floor. But tonight, folks, Jason Tatum, he was off the floor in the fourth quarter once again, but it was at the end of the fourth quarter because we didn't need him tonight at the end of the fourth quarter because of all the work he put in, specifically in that third quarter and the rest of the game, along with the rest of the team. The Celtics absolutely dominated the Chicago Bulls in the second half, specifically the third quarter, along with Jason Tatum, who tonight, this was his best performance of the season by far. 43 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists, triple-double. This is the MVP Jason Tatum that's at the top of the rankings, the top of the MVP ladder, the MVP ladder that the NBA puts out every single week. This is the Jason Tatum we know and love, and this is the peak of Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics. The other night, the Celtics looked sluggish. Their offense looked awful. Defensively, they fell off throughout the game, yet it was the complete opposite story tonight. Early on, the offense was a little sloppy. Defensively, the team couldn't get stops. The Bulls, it looked like really the beginning of this game, it was going to be the same type of game where the Bulls, the Celtics, can we pull ahead a little bit here? Can we pull ahead? Oh, nope, here come the Bulls. Here's the Bulls leading by 2. Here's the Bulls leading by 1. But eventually the Celtics, they took that throttle and they pushed it all the way forward, specifically in that second half. And it was a complete turnaround from the other night where the Bulls, they pushed the throttle forward in the fourth quarter the other night. And it was the Celtics in this third quarter tonight that pushed the throttle forward and eventually came out with this dominant win. And unfortunately, this is the type of Celtics we should be really expecting to see every single night, although we haven't seen it much this season, but we're seeing shades of it, of course, tonight come out, and we want to see it the rest of the way out. We're not going to see it every single night, but we want to see more of these performances from the Celtics where we're seeing Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, the starting lineup sit on the bench in the fourth quarter. You know how many times we saw that last year? We haven't seen it a ton this year, but tonight, I love seeing Jason Tatum just sitting there smiling on the bench while Jordan Walsh and the rest of them got a run out there in the final couple of minutes of this game, because dominant Celtics performance tonight.
I mean, dominance the best word for it. It was a total shift in the energy, I guess one could say, right? From Thursday night. I mean, we were talking about this before we went on live. This is the Celtics we know. This brand of basketball. Now, we've seen the Celtics at times this year, win games in big fashion, but the brand of ball they're playing isn't necessarily the same brand we were used to seeing last year. Tonight, the Celtics, I think they made an emphasis to get into the paint tonight, Seamus, and I love that, especially from Jaylen Brown. We're going to talk about it a little bit. Obviously, the Tatum performance is amazing. Luke Cornett, Kristaps, they got him going. Something Randy was talking about heavily in the past couple of shows is, get Kristaps on those mismatches, attack those smaller guards, get him some easy buckets. He did exactly that. So, I loved everything I saw from the Celtics tonight, especially, like we said, in that second half. So let's take a look tonight, Seamus, at our lead tracker. Now, we can see here a sea of green in that second half, really starting in that second quarter. It was back and forth in that first. We saw a couple of lead changes, 8 lead changes to be exact, up until that early on in the second where Boston just took over, and it was all C's from there. Seamus, Obviously, something we've talked about this year are the Celtics' slow starts on their first quarter approach. It wasn't necessarily super slow compared to what Chicago was doing. They didn't really get down to a deficit. However, they did come out sloppy. What did they fix in that second half that stood out to you versus that first half?
Well, for one, the team was able to get stops, which is one of the biggest things in sports, whether it's you're watching basketball or football. If you cannot get a stop, you're going to have to outscore the other team. And the Celtics, yes, they're one of the more talented offensive teams in the league, but I thought we saw some trouble against the Chicago Bulls, specifically in the first half of this game and last game, where the Celtics just could not stop the Chicago Bulls from shooting threes and making threes. And yes, they controlled the pace of the game, but I thought, then this happens too often for the Celtics, really, and it has this season, where we're seeing the other team penetrate the paint
Right.
too often to the point where they're wide open corner threes, wide open wing threes. And you can, of course, when you're getting into the paint, there's that easy floater right there. And if you can get all the way to the bucket, you're getting a layup. And I thought the Celtics were giving up a little bit too many of those opportunities, specifically last game and the first half of this game. But in the second half, they were, of course, forcing turnovers, getting stops. And offensively, you already kind of said it, points in the paint were huge for the Celtics tonight,
Massive.
penetrating the paint. And Jason Tatum, the reason he had 43 points tonight is because he was getting inside of the paint. And the paint battle, we've talked about it a lot this season, where the Celtics just cannot quite win the paint battle with
Right.
every single team. Yet tonight, 60-38 a 60-38 advantage in points in the paint for the Boston Celtics tonight. That's incredible
Not
against
only
the
that,
Chicago Bulls team that has
rebounding
Nikola
too.
Vucevic.
The
Oh, go
rebounding,
ahead.
we killed them on the glass. Just want to put that out there. We talked about in this inside the paint, right? And they just in that general area rebounded very, very well tonight. We killed them there.
Yeah, and it really wasn't that story the other night at all, because we were talking about it with Randy on post game, and he was saying we need to go down inside the paint and be taking advantage of those mismatches with Kristaps Porzingis. We, of course, they had Nikola Vucevic, and Nikola Vucevic can be a perimeter big or he can be an interior oriented big. However, the Celtics the other night, they were really discombobulated in penetrating the paint, getting down inside the interior, and really just mucking things up. And really, in this history of the Boston Celtics, especially with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and even before them, the Boston Celtics pride themselves on being a physical basketball team. And honestly, this year, although the Celtics are contenders and they have some very physical players on the roster, they've lacked in that category a little bit. We've
No,
talked
no,
about this
no
on
doubt.
post games of the past, where we're going, is there a little bit of a championship hangover here, where they come back into the season, they won last year, they're feeling really good about themselves, and they can kind of float through some of these games, and they're not exactly giving their all 100% effort all the time. Yet tonight, I think there was some extra motivation there because of what happened at the Garden the other night. It really felt like, oh, we're going to pull this game out. Yes, it's going back and forth, but we're going to pull this game out in the end. Yet it was the Chicago Bulls, 10-0 run in the fourth quarter, kept pounding the Celtics down low, and eventually they scored 117 points. Tonight, the Chicago Bulls don't even get to 100 points. Of course, it's still 98, pretty close, but they don't get to the 100-point mark, while the Celtics get to 123. And you could tell specifically from the top producers from the Celtics, Tatum, Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, they were really getting it going and being aggressive. And I do think there was some extra motivation under themselves to play a little bit more physical, be a little bit more aggressive going down towards the paint, being a little bit more aggressive on the defensive end of the floor. And I think that's what made all of the difference tonight for the Boston Celtics.
I think when you talk about what Boston does so well, right? They shoot the ball. It's better than anybody in the league, right? They have 18.8 made three-pointers per game this season. That is the highest in NBA history, right? They are historically good at shooting the basketball. But they are at their best, believe it or not, when they are attacking the paint. That's when they're best at shooting the basketball, when they establish the inside presence first. They did that tonight, and they've done it a couple other times this season, honestly, against the higher caliber of teams that we're really seeing it. They're not doing it against the bad teams, right? That's when the struggles of just throwing up those shots kind of come into play. But tonight, they did that. Like you said, they attacked the paint, and it was crucial for the Celtics to have a game like that. Just get back on track. Listen, not every game is going to be easy, right? You need, sometimes it's going to take a little bit more effort, right, to get into that paint, to get contact, to get to the free throw line, to get those open looks. It's going to exude more effort sometimes against different teams. Boston, they did that tonight, and obviously, like, you know, the score shows, excuse me, in the win that, you know, they did it and they executed it very well. So credit to them tonight. Talk about execution. It's only right we go in this direction. You see his face up there at the top of the screen. The player spotlight tonight, guys. Now, how many times actually we have to come up with a whole new segment because of this play, just Jason Tatum and his just complete and utter domination of the SeatGeek player spotlight, guys. Before we hop in to talk about Jason Tatum, I just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of the post-game show this year, guys, SeatGeek. The holidays are here. The Celtics, they're playing on Christmas and for throughout the rest of the year, guys. SeatGeek has you covered for the best tickets in the game. Guys, use code Celtics Weekly at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. That link is at the top of the description down below. Now, let's talk about Jason Tatum. Now, 43 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists. Now, you ask me what makes this stat line just absurd, Seamus. How about 9 made three-pointers to go along with already a monstrous stat line? Now, Jason Tatum is the second player in NBA history, right, to achieve 43 points, or at least 40 points, 16 rebounds, 15 or more rebounds, and 10 more assists, alongside 8 or more threes. However, he is the first player in NBA history to have 40 or more points, 16 or 15 or more rebounds, 10 or more assists, while shooting above 60% from three. So a historic performance from Jason Tatum tonight. Seamus, we have seen it. He came out of the gate scorching hot. He really hasn't, you know, cooled off yet. However, he's dropped in the MVP ladder. Does tonight's game for you move the needle on where Jason Tatum stands right now among the league's MVP race?
Well, of course, and every week they change it because there's 3 or 4 games a week, and if you go 4-0 in a week and just put up monstrous performance after monstrous performance, they're going to move people up in that ladder. And honestly, the MVP ladder too. It's like Tyler Hero, number 10 right now. All right, Tyler Hero.
He's hooping though. He is.
So he's hooping. I'm just wondering, like, is he gonna even be an all-star? But this is about Jason Tatum right now. I'm gonna pull up here on the screen. Not we don't have the graphic here, but his shot chart tonight. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I mean, look at those made attempts by the rim. And then, of course, from three-point land, that one corner three, but the rest at the top of the key, he's just pulling up and hitting in dude's face. And if you notice at the bottom of the screen, 67% from the field tonight on 24 attempts. It's not as if he's 67% on, oh, he has 10 attempts. Oh, he has 9 attempts, 8 attempts. 24 attempts from the floor tonight. That's a pretty good amount. 67%. 16 makes, and of course, 9 of 15 from beyond the arc. This is just an absurd game from Jason Tatum. It felt like every time you turned around and looked at the TV screen, or were looking at the TV screen watching the game, there was Jason Tatum scoring the ball. There was Jason Tatum making a play, along with 10 plus assists too, or sorry, not 10 plus assists, 10 assists and 16 rebounds. I mean, he was doing it all tonight for the Boston Celtics. And we just had a video come out that was, are the Celtics relying too much on Jason Tatum? Well, if this is the Jason Tatum you're getting on a nightly basis, which we know is not going to be this audacious every single night, this spectacular, but that's why the Celtics rely so heavily on Jason Tatum in moments, because we know exactly what Joe Mazzulla and the coaching staff, rather, they know what he can do and what he's capable of. And you even add on all of the other Celtics around him. If they're on their game, specifically Brown and Porzingis, they were phenomenal tonight. The Celtics are an absolutely dominant basketball team, and it really all starts with Jason Tatum being this dominant. He doesn't even have to be this dominant on a nightly basis, yet when you get these type of performances, the Celtics, they should win by almost 30, and it almost happened tonight. Not quite 30, a 25-point game, we'll take that, but they're inching up towards that mark, of course, because this is what this team is capable of, and this is what Jason Tatum is capable of as well. And we talked about it on the post game the other night. Jason Tatum, go to the rim, go to the rim, go to the rim. We have a player who can go to the rim, dominate teams down inside the paint, and of course, make it to the free throw line. And not only that, 15 threes tonight. You know, we could talk all we want. Oh, Jason Tatum, maybe he shoots too many threes here and there.
Yeah,
But
when they're
these are the type
falling,
of
let them fly. When
but
they're
these are the
falling, let them
type of
fly.
nights where we go, we can't really talk about that too much because we've talked about in the past, oh, if he's hitting his threes at a high clip like he is tonight, he has the potential to put up a 40-point game and just blow out the other team. And this is really one of those nights we saw 15 3-point attempts out of 24 attempts in total. You might want to see that a little bit more balanced, but he hit 9 3-pointers. And when he's doing that, he's one of the most dominant players in the league, if not the league's MVP. And yes, I do believe that Jason Tatum, he upped his MVP status tonight significantly against the Chicago Bulls, especially in a game where this is the second night of a not a back to back, a home and home, right? Against the Chicago Bulls. The other night, yes, he had 31 points, looked pretty good in that game. Outside of him, this rest of the Celtics didn't look all that great, yet they traveled to Chicago. They're on the road, the Boston Celtics. They go and travel, and yet they play even better. And Jason
Right.
Tatum, he plays even better from the other night. And I believe if they're going to release that MVP ladder again next week, you have to see Jason Tatum. He's going to have those three little green arrows
Right.
up on the
Going up.
graphic on Instagram, of course.
It was a weird start for the game because I'm sitting there and I'm watching. I believe he started to open to came out of the gate 0 3 from 3, 1 of 5 from the floor. Shot wasn't there, missed a couple looks at the rim. And normally with Tatum, when he comes out flat, it's not always, smooth sailing for the rest of the game, right? And maybe he puts up a quarter where, he puts up 12 points or whatever it might be, but normally what you see out of the gate from Tatum is what you're going to get. Tonight, that third quarter, Seamus, 18 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists just in that quarter alone. I mean, he essentially was responsible for everything the Celtics did in the third quarter, which is really when they boosted that lead and took control of this game. So, right now, when I look at the MVP race, you have to point at Jason Tatum as the guy. Because right now, what the Celtics are doing, they are winning basketball games behind their best player, behind Jason Tatum. He is the reason the Celtics are moving at such a fast, a successful rate this season. He leads the team in points, rebounds, and assists. I mean, the guy has just been dominant all season long. After this performance, 43 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists. Obviously, there's a lot of basketball to play, but I mean, you're crazy to not look at Jason Tatum right now and think this is this guy's MVP to lose. If he continues to play around the level, right? Not this level, right? Not 43 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists with 9 made threes, right? If he does that, then you're in for a really historic season. But just around the level he's playing at, and the Celtics continue to win games, Seamus, I don't think there's a world where the league kind of has to give it to JT. Especially voter fatigue. I mean, that's a thing.
Yeah, voter fatigue, and also you just look at team success. I think the NBA voters or the media voters, which it's all the media who votes on these awards, and it's
Right.
really crazy that we have all these awards. They're really media driven awards. The
Yeah,
media gives
no,
them out.
no inside NBA guys, like no GMs, no player. I mean, that's interesting.
It really is because you think about some players in the media, they're not exactly the most liked players, and other players, the media loves them. They absolutely
Well,
love certain
that
players.
the guy right there, right? That guy right there might be one of the ones that the media. I don't know if they love him so much.
Well, yeah, you even look like I don't want to go too far in history, but a year like 2018-19, you have Giannis versus Harden. Well, what's the narrative on Harden? Oh, he's the whole offense. They let him shoot all the time. And oh, look, here's Giannis. He's this inspirational story, and everybody loves his attitude and his personality. And that year, Harden averaged 45 in January, couldn't win the MVP. I shouldn't say he wasn't close to Giannis, but Giannis came out with the MVP. It could have been either or, but it felt like Harden didn't even have a chance because of the media
Right, because
narrative
it's just the net. Yeah.
behind it. There is, of course, voter fatigue with Nikola Jokic. He won 3 out of the last 4. Really should have won 4 out of the last 4 if they didn't. Again,
Well, yeah.
voter fatigue. They wanted to give it to Joel Embiid. I understand. He had a great season that year. He was trying to win the MVP.
Oh, he
I
made
don't
it
know if he was
clear.
trying
He
to win
ran a he
anything
ran a
else.
harsh campaign to win that MVP.
And this year for Jason Tatum, it's going to be tough to beat guys like Nikola Jokic. It's going to be tough to beat guys like Giannis, even Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. But Tatum has an advantage over these other guys. Maybe not Shea in this category. They're about the same here. The team success. Media loves to award team success. The Milwaukee Bucks, if they're they're hanging around the 6th seed later in the season. If the Denver Nuggets, they're hanging around the 6th seed later in the season, which that's where both teams are they're kind of scuffling up near that seeding right now. They might be 4th one week, they might be 6th, 7th another week. But if those two teams finish 6, 7, anywhere in that range, and the Boston Celtics, they go and grab the number 1 seed yet again, which I will point out the Celtics, they still have to go and attain that from the Cleveland Cavaliers. Little annoying that we could have done that almost a month ago against the Cleveland Cavaliers
Right.
in Cleveland, but now the Celtics have just constantly been trailing by 1 game. It's like, can they just lose one? We win one. We're right there. But Celtics are so close, regardless. If the Celtics go out and grab the number 1 seed and they're dominant yet again, will they win 67 games? Or what did they win last year? Was it 64 or 67? Was it 64 last year?
64 last year.
Yeah, 64. The Warriors of 2017 or 16-17 won 67. I always
67, right.
compare the Celtics to that specific Warriors team with Kevin Durant, so I get those mixed up. But 64 games last year. If the Celtics get over 60 wins, the Bucks and Nuggets, if they're not even close to that mark, the Thunder could be close to there. But if you're gonna judge Shea and Tatum, Tatum might have the advantage from having a little bit more seniority in the league
Right.
by, of course, a year, but his stardom has been a little bit longer than Shea's. And maybe we'll have a couple of better numbers than Shea at the end of the season. I could definitely see Jason Tatum pulling out the MVP this year. It's going to have to hinge on multiple things that might be outside of Tatum's control a little bit, but what Tatum can control is his own performances and his team success. And outside of that, of course, he has to get the media on his side, but it's not really up to him. It's not really up to how Nikola Jokic, Giannis, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, the Thunder, the Bucks, the Nuggets finish. If some of these factors, of course, fall the Celtics' way and in Jason Tatum's favor, he'll be able to pull out an MVP this season. But regardless, he's having a top 5 season. And I think this should, outside of the MVP conversation, boost Jason Tatum into the top 5 player conversation
Yep. Oh,
solidly. Because I think a lot of people, they still look at the league and go, oh, is Tatum in that top 5? He might be 6, he might be 7, he might just be 5. We don't know. Jason Tatum is having potentially a top 3, at least a top 5 season right now. And the performance in which he put up tonight, I think, proves that entirely. But just the stretch that he's had to begin this season, even looking at the other night, he was the only Celtic who performed well in that game against the Bulls the other night. If he can continue that type of run, and we don't expect 43 points every night, but if he can get closer to the 30 mark, shoot efficiently, get to the line, 10 plus rebounds, can he rack up those assists? He should be in that conversation, a top 5 player in the NBA, because I think people disrespect him just a little bit within
no
that
doubt.
conversation.
No doubt. And I think he's solidified in there. Like I don't think I can respect your knowledge on the game of basketball if you can sit there and seriously tell me there are 5 players in this association, in this NBA, right, that are better than Jason Tatum right now. Because it's just the evidence shows not that he is arguably the best two-way player this game has to offer, right? The threat he presents from all 3 levels of scoring is truly unmatched. And you add in this aspect of playmaking he's developed that is really now he can control the highest caliber, right? The highest offense in the league, he is at the helm of controlling. That's very impressive. Now, I do think, like, here's the interesting part, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this. Here's the interesting aspect with the Jason Tatum and the MVP race and kind of hit the top 5, right? And that whole narrative right now. For Tatum, he's in such a weird spot when you compare him, because statistically, he's not really quite there, right? When you look at him compared to Giannis and Jokic and even SGA, right? The numbers wise, he's going to be about 3 points behind. But when you look at his situation, right, a lot of people use the situation Jason Tatum's in on the Celtics team, playing alongside Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis and all this talent, against him. And I think that's an interesting way to look at it, because for me, it's like, okay, well, if you're going to, like, what you have to understand is that Jason Tatum is the clear best player on this loaded team and is statistically leading in all categories on this team, right? So it's like, you look at the year before the Celtics loaded up their roster, right? And, you know, they loaded up their roster, right? They have a stacked roster. The year before that, he's putting up 30 points per game, right? 50 points in a game 7, was commanding this team. And if he doesn't go down on an ankle injury, this guy could be looking at 3 straight NBA Finals appearances in an 0-3 comeback. Like, this guy had done it all, right? The year prior, he put up 46 in an elimination game, gets to the NBA Finals, wins the Eastern Conference. Like he has all these accolades, right? And it's like, here's your guy. He does it statistically. And then it's just like, oh, well, his numbers take a hit. Well, you got to look at his situation. Of course, he's not averaging 34. He could. If you put Jason Tatum right in a situation like kind of Giannis or Jokic or Luka Doncic are in, right, where they are getting all the looks and every, right, the offense is them to score, I think you would see Jason Tatum averaging right around 32, 33, 31 points per game. I think he's very capable of doing that. We've seen that, Seamus, right? But it's just like, no, he's in a situation that he doesn't do that, right? He doesn't need to do that.
But at the same time, it's like he's averaging 28.3 points per game. Giannis is up at 32.7, Jokic at 31, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander at 30. And it's like he only takes a 2-point hit per game because of being on this successful Celtics team. That's what I don't want to say it annoys me about comparing and contrasting players in the NBA, but everybody's in their own unique situations and
Right.
has their
No
own
doubt.
unique usage. And that's what gets me about the Jason Tatum conversation a little bit, is that people like to penalize him for being in a good situation. And it's like, why? Why is Jason Tatum penalized for playing with Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis, Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Al Horford and Peyton Pritchard this year? Peyton Pritchard's just been going off this season. Why is he penalized for playing with all of these different players? This ultra talented. I don't think anybody thinks right now that the Celtics aren't favorites to go back to back. I think you look at the rest of the leagues. You could, oh yeah, the Thunder, they look brick show in the NBA Cup final. It's like on the biggest stage, just the young team. They're still very young. The Thunder are extremely
They're
young
about 2
compared to
years
the
away.
Celtics.
They're about 2
Right.
years away.
They're very talented, but they're still very young. The Milwaukee Bucks, they're old. They're an old team compared to the Celtics. The Denver Nuggets, they don't have the horses to run with the Celtics. The Dallas Mavericks, they don't have the horses clearly from the NBA Finals to run with the Celtics. The Timberwolves, they're almost out of the conversation. The Houston Rockets, they've just entered the conversation. Still a very young team. The Cavaliers are the one team you look at and go, oh, they're pretty
Oh, like
dangerous,
maybe,
but
right?
they
Maybe, right?
still don't quite have the star power that the Celtics have. And even that game in Cleveland, no Brown, no White. Celtics were up in that game, couldn't finish the deal at all in Cleveland. Yet, are the Cavs going to be able to beat the Celtics 4 out of 7 times? Very interesting question. We'll see later in the season if they even face in the same series in the playoffs. Sometimes those things don't even work out. But right now, the Celtics are the favorites to go back to back, and that kind of annoys me about the Jason Tatum's argument. I shouldn't say argument, but the conversation, because you look at all these other players, the team around these other players isn't as good as the Celtics. And people love to, oh, look at what Jokic is doing for his team. Look at what Giannis is doing for his team. Look at what Shea is doing for his team. But like you said, if Jason Tatum was put in these situations, he'd be averaging well over 30.
Right.
He'd be averaging more assists because really we talk about Jason Tatum. Yes, he's the focal point of the Celtics offense, but we also have other guys too who go and take the ball at the top of the key. Jaylen Brown can be a ball handler. Derek White and Drew Holiday, yes, they've been more of these wing type of players this year, but they can
Right.
handle the ball. Peyton Pritchard's really been that secondary playmaker we've had this season. And without all those players, Jason Tatum would have an even more increased role in that aspect. And he would be putting up some of the same numbers as these other guys. Yet because he's playing with a talented team who's bound to potentially win the title, he's going to be penalized. We've never really seen. I shouldn't say we've never seen that in NBA history, but for other guys, it doesn't happen the same way. Didn't happen for Michael Jordan. Didn't happen for Magic Johnson or Larry Bird. Didn't happen for other guys we've seen in the past, such as LeBron James, Steph Curry. Yet for Jason Tatum, that is the conversation. And he is one of the most disrespected players in all of the NBA. And we saw it this summer at the Olympics. We look back at that moment, and I understand the NBA. Yes, you want to promote LeBron, you want to promote Curry and Kevin
Right.
Durant. NBC is taking over the NBA's coverage next season, and that's the network the Olympics were on. They want to showcase all the best players or who have been the best players the last decade. But how is Jason Tatum, like, after you see tonight's performances, How is he sitting on the bench in the Olympics, Steve
Yeah,
Kerr? How
this
is
is
he
the
sitting
same
behind
guy.
Kevin
Although,
Durant?
and I do want to say this though. This Tatum, we are seeing, and I hate to play the opposite side here, because I agree with you, but I will say, I think that whole thing needed to happen.
That could be
Tatum
true.
wasn't right. He wasn't. It felt like he was a little in his head, right? His shot wasn't there. I mean, the finals he played great, but it was just that shot. That shot, he couldn't figure that out. So I can see now. I think a couple months removed from it makes a little bit more sense to me. Right now, 0 minutes doesn't make sense to me, but it's like the Tatum we're seeing now is a much elevated and cleaner player than what I think we would have seen in the summer. I think he's cleaned up his game and kind of figured it out a little bit more post Olympics than he did entering the Olympics. That said, a man that scores 43 points, 16 rebounds, and 10 assists, right, should get minutes, get burn on that team. No doubt about it. No doubt.
Well, also too, like we'll mention this about Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, can he really be a guy who's a role player? I mean,
Right.
he's never really been a role player. Even in his first year with the Celtics, yeah, he was kind of a role player. Marcus Morris was on that team, Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward went out with injury, of course, and that really elevated Tatum's role on that team to go and be a starter because initially Jason Tatum was going to be a bench player on the 17-18 Celtics. That's how the season started out. It was, oh, Jason Tatum, he's going to come off the bench. Gordon Hayward goes and gets hurt, and Jason Tatum is all of a sudden a starter. And from there, he wasn't exactly a star, but Brad Stevens, he wasn't shy about putting the ball in Jason Tatum's hands every once in a while as a rookie. Everybody knew on that team, especially Marcus Morris, who is, kind of the big brother on that team. Hopefully, you have no Kyries on the team anymore that take offense to that statement, of course. But he was kind of the big brother on that team, Marcus Morris, and he could tell anybody that Jason Tatum, he saw what was coming with Jason Tatum in the league, and what he saw was what came tonight: 43 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists, and that's the type of player Jason Tatum is. He needs the ball in his hands, and if he's off to the side, he's maybe a little more marginalized, and that's when we see, oh, Jason Tatum, he's really getting after it on the defensive end of the floor. And Jason Tatum, that shot, what you're talking about in the Olympics, is if
Right.
he's standing in the corner, you got to be hitting those corner
You
threes
do. You do.
consistently off to catch and shoot. And he just wasn't quite doing that at the
Right.
time. Yet when the ball is in his hands, and that's really too disclaimer with the Olympics. LeBron wanted the ball in his hands. Steph Curry, of course, is kind of the player that can really play anywhere, but he was demanding the ball a lot on that team. There were other players such as Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant coming off the bench. They were demanding the ball. And when you're in a system like that, it's kind of hard to allocate who should be getting all of the touches. And Jason Tatum's role on that team, he didn't quite know how to fit that role because of the role he's been filling on the Celtics, which is the primary playmaker, the primary scorer, the primary guy on the offense for the Celtics, especially this season. Almost feels like after the Olympics, he even leaned more into who he truly is as a basketball player
Oh,
this
no
season.
doubt.
And that's really
No
what you're
doubt.
talking about, too, where he's flourished into this next level of Jason Tatum that
Right.
I think some of us expected maybe this could happen this season because of all the motivation that he gained over the summer and the disrespect the Celtics were shown as a championship team. But really, what he's done to start this season, we have never seen in his entire career. Normally, it's Jason Tatum starting a little bit slow in the season and then
Yep.
ramping up. I mean, this year, he really hasn't missed a beat at all. Maybe some of it is that Olympic run, was still playing basketball a little bit over the summer, but
Right.
he really has not taken a step back. And that's why he's in the MVP conversation so early and why he's going to continuously be in the MVP conversation. It's always that first part of the season that Jason Tatum just cannot quite get down. That's different this year.
We're gonna shift gears here. I do want to say one more thing though before I do. I've been impressed because last year, if I could be off here, but last year I believe he's opened up the gate out of the season scorching, right? For like the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then he went cold through I feel like the thing with Tatum, he has these monstrous months, right? Where you're like, oh my God, best player in the NBA. And then he goes through a shooting slump in prior years, right? Knock on wood. We are now 3 months into the NBA season, and it's been steady, right? It's like here's the start. It's up, oh, right back to that start. We're good. We're good up. Oh, it's not going down. We've seen maybe 1 or 2 games this year, right, where Tatum doesn't have it. That's growth. That's progress. He's in year 8. We talk about that year 8 jump. You're starting to see that maturity from him. So I do think that's worth noting with Tatum too.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing too. That's what
Absolutely.
propels him into the conversation of the MVP.
100%. 100%.
I mean,
Yep.
like you have because if you have those down weeks or down months, that'll kill your MVP conversation. He's been in the MVP conversation
Yep.
in the past. It's just, oh, there goes Jason Tatum for a week. There goes Jason Tatum for a
Right.
month. And
And
that
you can't
completely takes
recover.
him out of the order. Yet
Right.
this year, that's where you talk about that year 8 jump. If he's consistent the entirety of the season, that's when you can win MVP because the most valuable player is not just the most valuable player this month or that month. It's every month for the
Right.
entirety of the season. And that's where Jason Tatum is right now.
Absolutely. Now this is a new segment we're running here. Now I'm going to preface this before we start. It's not the right guy. You're going to find out why. It's the first time running it, so give us a break here. So we apologize for the guy. Now, personally, this was my pick. So the headline is, we didn't have an answer. And I do want to say that. So, Justin, I apologize. But if you've been watching the post-game show here throughout the entirety of this year, Justin gives out his flowers every game. And we thought it was only right here now to talk about Justin's flowers, whether he's on the show or not. Tonight, Justin's flowers, I'm going to put it in air quotes because it's fine. But Justin's flowers tonight, guys, was Jaylen Brown. Now, Jaylen Brown, this player, right, he's not necessarily going to be the player of the game, but he brings an aspect to the game that's very important and was crucial in a win or, maybe a loss, kind of like a Tommy point. However, guys, before we jump into Jaylen Brown and why he was the Justin Flowers, the first ever kind of recipient officially, I do want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this segment, Bucket Squad. Guys, Bucket Squad is the best basketball apparel in the game. They have you covered for shorts, shoes, hoodies, basketball bags, basketballs. They got it all, guys. Our link is going to be in the description. Use code Celtics Talk Weekly at checkout for 10% off every order. Guys, I'm telling you, if you're a hooper, I play basketball I try to play almost every day, every week. Bucket Squad is the best apparel in the business. Now, let's talk about Jaylen Brown here tonight, Seamus, right? 19 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists. Now, really, though, the flowers of the game is unique because really, we're not so worried about that stat line. You can win this award if, you're putting up 6. I mean, Luke Cornett was in the conversation tonight, but Jaylen Brown, he brought an aspect to the game that the Celtics kind of have been lacking this year. He got into the paint. He got aggressive. You look at JB, you look at what he brought tonight. What did you like?
Well, Jaylen Brown, we mentioned it before we came on to the post game. You said he really set the tone for this game early on. And Jaylen Brown, he's really been up and down this season, the
Yes.
entirety of the way. Unfortunately, we can pick on some of his past performances from this past week, but tonight he had a really solid performance 9 of 20 out there, 19 points, 8 assists for Jaylen Brown. And that's when he's really affecting this team in a positive way. And we see when Jaylen Brown can play in the way he played tonight, which is aggressive, going to the rim, shooting the ball efficiently. Now, he didn't have a great night from 3, but from everywhere else, if you consider he was 0 of 5 from 3.
Right.
But then you look at the rest of his stat line, he's 9 of 15 from 2. That's super efficient from inside the arc. And that's what we're really honing in on with Jaylen Brown is when he's playing efficiently in that manner, that's when the Celtics can really ramp it up and take over other teams. Because some of the nights in which the Celtics have struggled this year, we've seen Jason Tatum. Oh, the other night, Jason Tatum, 31 points. We lose to the Bulls by 9. But when Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown come to the party, that's when you see a night like tonight, 123 to 98. That's when the Celtics are really running past teams, is when they have their other grade A superstar who can be a top 15 player in himself, Jaylen Brown. When he's coming to the party and he's bringing all that he brings, that's when the party for the Celtics turns up. That's when it turns up because Jaylen Brown, he is a driving force for this team that just brings another level. If the Celtics didn't have Jaylen Brown, they wouldn't be in the best team, or I shouldn't say they wouldn't be in the conversation, but they wouldn't be solidified best team in the league. He's part of what makes them that. They would still be in the conversation, don't get me wrong. But with all the other players they still have. But they're the solidified best team in the league. And Jaylen Brown has a lot to do with that, being the Celtics' second best player and their second all-star. We think about last year, Jaylen Brown, he won finals MVP. if he doesn't perform how he performs in the playoffs and in the finals, who knows what happens? I know the Celtics ran through the playoffs last year, but it's really those little tiny marginal moments that can either make a dominant playoff run or just maybe an average playoff run. Maybe the Celtics don't even win the title because, oh, we let game three go in Dallas. Oh, all of a sudden it's 2-2 in the series, best of three. Who knows what happens after that? That's ludicrous thinking to some people, but the margins are really that thin in the NBA. And it can be as simple as, oh, is Jalen Brown, is he having a great night? And say some of the other players on the Celtics, maybe it's Holiday, White, Porzingis, if they're not showing up to the party, can Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum? That's the second time I almost said Jason Statham on post game, the last two post games. No, folks, not Jason Statham. He's
That's
awesome
me.
in himself, but this is another action figure in Jason Tatum the Celtics have. But regardless, those two players are really the catalyst to what drives the entire Celtics team. And these other guys, of course, thrive off of what Brown and Tatum brings to the floor. And if Brown, if he isn't quite at the level in which we expect him to be at or where we know he can be at, that's when we see the Celtics, they can kind of struggle on some other nights if they don't get a monstrous performance out of Peyton Pritchard, if they don't get another performance out of Derek White, Porzingis, Drew Holiday. This team just has a bucket of riches right now for who they can get performances out of.
Right.
But on some nights, Derek White, Drew Holiday, they haven't been quite here this year in terms of being up to the level we know they're at. And Porzingis, he missed the first 17 games of the season. And if Peyton Pritchard, if he's not 25-point Pritchard, well, who else are we looking at? It's Jalen Brown. And when, of course, he's hitting at the level in which he hits at, goes to the rim, he's aggressive and going to the rim. And of course, he's looking to score and looking to create for others because that's big too. Jalen Brown has not always looked to create for others in his entire career. And when
Right.
he is, we see 8 assists tonight. He brings everybody along with him, along with his scoring number, 19 points. That's when the Celtics can really be at their best.
It's so weird. All right, how do I phrase this? So I don't look at the stat line for Jalen Brown. You have to watch the game to know whether or like Jalen. There's been some times where Jalen Brown has scored 40 points, and I like the games when he scores 22 points more. And here's why. It's because Jalen Brown is like the focal point, right? The focal point of this team, right? I feel like his play it trickles down and it has an effect when he's visually like when he's there on defense and he's picking up full court, the team picks up on that. And tonight offensively, he was getting in the paint. He was pounding the ball down into the paint. He was getting into the post. He was picking on those smaller defenders, right? So, that is what makes Jalen Brown so good and so big time for this Celtics team, Seamus, right? He brings an aspect that really no one else does. And he is this bruiser, this grit and grinder that he can light you up for 40. We've seen it. But these are the games I like from JB. Like it was exactly what I saw tonight. He was getting down low. He was scoring the ball in the paint. You saw other guys pick up on that flow. Right? He was getting down. He was getting in transition. He threw down a couple dunks. Right? It's like Tatum picks up on that, and then you got Porzingis picking up on that, and then Pritchard checks in the game, and he feeds off this energy. I mean, energy shifter is a great nickname for this guy because his energy, Seamus, is just so apparent on the floor. And tonight, that's to me why I looked at the flowers. I'm like, it had to be Jalen Brown because that's what he brought. And that, you ask me, that's what made him the finals MVP and what makes him so special on this team.
Yeah, and I think you're completely right on the trickle down effect that he has on the rest of the team because Jalen Brown, he is typically a player that consistently plays hard almost every single night. And what we
Right.
really see his shift of energy be in is, can he make the right decisions on the floor for himself? There are some nights where we see him be a little bit too gung ho with the ball in terms of, yeah, I'm going to shoot this outside shot from 30 feet, or I'm going to shoot this mid range right here. Yet, uh, maybe drive to the rim a little bit more, maybe dish out
Right.
to your teammates a little bit more. And that's what we really saw out of him tonight. And when he's doing that, I completely agree that it trickles down to the rest of the team because not only is he creating other opportunities for others out on the floor when he's penetrating the paint, making the defense focus in on him. But when he's dishing out to his other teammates, such as Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Peyton Pritchard, all those guys are seeing extra wide open opportunities. And that's really what made the Celtics run so efficiently last year is when Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, when they were collapsing defenses, we saw last year Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. It's not like they were having bad performances, but maybe some nights both of them had 20, 22,
Right.
23 points. But who else did we see have 20 points? Oh, look, Derek White has 20 points. Oh, look, Kristaps Porzingis like tonight. He has 20 points. Drew Holiday, he's putting up 20 points. And that comes from Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, specifically Brown, too, because we know Jason Tatum and what he can do and the performances he can put up on a nightly basis. But it really comes with both of those guys, and specifically Jalen Brown doing it on a nightly basis. If he's doing that, the effect 1000% radiates to others on the floor. And I love that you brought up that point because that is completely true about Jalen Brown. Jason Tatum, we know that he is really the primary guy for
Right.
the Boston Celtics. Yet when not Jason Tatum, when Jalen Brown, the Jays, Jalen Brown, when Jalen Brown is the one who is taking part of that role alongside Tatum, that can really cast an effect on everybody else that makes this team so dominant. And really, what we saw a lot last season with this team, and unfortunately, this season, we haven't seen it a whole lot, or at least as much as we really wanted to. Yet tonight has to be a positive sign for it moving forward because the last two games, really the last three games, we came in here on Sunday with Randy and we talked about, Washington's a nothing game, blah, blah, blah. We won by 14, whatever. But Randy was kind of right in terms of we did play down to our opponent, and look what it resulted in on Thursday. The Chicago Bulls coming to the Garden absolutely whooped the Celtics in the fourth quarter, and that does feel like a little bit of a wake up moment for the Celtics, where they go, look, if we're not actually playing our opponents the way we know how to play them, we're going to lose to good opponents. It's not going to
Right.
be a Washington Wizards every single night, a Detroit Pistons every single night. We're not going to get 11 days of rest and have two games in 11 days and play all these easy opponents. No, if Chicago comes into our place, they're playing with a high pace, they're making 3-point shots, we're not adjusting defensively, they can beat us. And yet tonight we come out onto the floor, the Celtics come out onto the floor, and they have a newfound emphasis on what they need to do right in order to win the game. And part of that does come largely with Jalen Brown, who I do believe if he's on or he's off, he greatly affects whether they can run past a team or whether they're going to struggle against a team. He has a
Right.
massive effect on that.
Jalen Brown can have an off night and still his presence and his energy is going to affect the team in a positive way, right? Like Jalen Brown might be one of the only superstars in the NBA because yes, he is a superstar. In whatever way he's a Finals MVP. The guy's a superstar.
Finals
I th-
MVP, folks. This isn't an Andre
yeah,
Iguodala Finals
yeah, no,
MVP.
no.
Oh,
This
he
is
held LeBron to 40. It's
yeah,
like, no,
no, no,
Jalen Brown
no.
was the best player in the finals.
Yes, right. And he might be one of the only superstars in the NBA that truly every night does the little things that you ask your role players to do. And that to me is the aspect of Jalen Brown that makes him so special and kind of puts him in a tier of his own because you don't see many guys take the role and do what Jalen Brown does. And you ask me, I'm not inside that locker room, right? I'm not, can't say I am, but I don't think he's asked to do it. A lot of the things and the little things he does is instincts based. And we talk about Jason Tatum and how he has this just natural instinct for the game that where he's picking up on, that he can really the game can control and run through his pace. Jalen Brown's got those similar instincts, but it's for the little things. It's for the minute details. And it really, really showed tonight. It showed in the playoffs and the NBA Finals and the Eastern Conference Finals, right? It showed up big time tonight. And flowers and props go to Jalen Brown.
I want to add on to that, too. The little things in Jalen Brown's game and those instincts that he has, I really do believe it comes from playing on teams like the 16-17
Yeah.
Celtics.
Yeah.
Comes from playing on teams like the 17-18 Celtics, where Jalen Brown, he's minimized to being essentially the 10th or 11th player on the team, especially in 17 or 16-17 with the Isaiah Thomas Celtics. He's a rookie. He's really not in the rotation whatsoever. What does he have to do in order to actually break into the rotation to become an NBA player, an NBA role player? Not forget it being a star.
Right.
Jaylen Brown has gone way past expectations of being a star in this league and being a potential top 15 player in the NBA. But just being a role player when he entered the league, that was not guaranteed with Jaylen
Right.
Brown whatsoever. And what did he have to do? He had to claw and scratch his way up to that status because even looking the next year, 16 17, yes, the Celtics went to the conference finals. Jaylen Brown was a rookie. They relegated him in the rotation behind guys like Gerald Green. Avery Bradley was on that roster. Jay Crowder. We all know the rough and tough guys like Kelly Olynyk, Marcus Smart, Isaiah Thomas, of course. That was Al Horford's first year. Anybody remembers Jonas Jerebko on
Yeah.
that team?
Whew, that was a squad. That was a
The
squad.
Celtics were 18
Amir
and 1.
Johnson.
Yes, the Celtics were 18 and 1 that year when Jonas Jerebko played over 20 minutes. Just a little tidbit for that Celtics team. And of
Little
course,
stat
too,
for you.
Terry Rozier being a young player. So that team was full of dogs in 16 17. But the next year, we look at that year. In that summer, at one point, before the Celtics traded Jay Crowder and Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie Irving, the summer squad included Marcus Morris, Gordon Hayward, Jay Crowder, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown was the fifth forward on that team, essentially.
Right.
And yes, Jay Crowder, of course, he left the equation, went to the Cavaliers, was traded to the Cavaliers, made Jaylen Brown the fourth forward in that rotation. But looking at that, there was no given. There was no given for Jaylen Brown for
Right.
him to be even a role player at that point in time because Jason Tatum was there. They had just drafted him third overall. The Celtics just drafted Jason Tatum third overall. Gordon Hayward, they just signed. The Celtics signed to a max extension. The Celtics traded a guard, Avery Bradley, for a forward in Marcus Morris, who had 2 years left on his deal. And Jaylen Brown's looking at it going, there's no guarantee that I'm going to make it on this Celtics squad. And what does he have to do in order to actually make it as not only a role player in this league, but then eventually a star, is doing all the little things, scratching and clawing his way up the rotation and actually earning his spot because we know in the NBA, yes, you can be drafted high, you can be given this awesome contract, 4 year max deal. If you don't earn your minutes on the floor, you're going to sit.
Right.
That's just what it is. People claim, oh, because the team paid this player, they drafted him, he's going to play here. No, you're going to. We've seen many situations around the NBA. If a
Marvin
player doesn't
Bagley.
earn his minutes, they're going to be sitting on the bench. And Jaylen Brown, he saw that his first year, his second year in the league, and even his third year at the 18-19 Celtics as well, when he kind of took a dip that year along with Jason Tatum. It was kind of their sophomore slumps, although Jason or Jaylen Brown was in his junior NBA season, right?
Right.
His third year. But with all those teams, Jaylen Brown, nothing was a given, nothing was a guarantee. And he's playing, mind you, too, with all of these other great NBA players, these great role players, and even great starters in the NBA, and even stars. Jaylen Brown, that developed him into where he is today, where we know he's not going to be the primary focus on the Celtics every single night with Jason Tatum on the roster. He can be if he was on another team or if Jason Tatum's out. We've seen that. We saw it against the Miami Heat, if I'm not mistaken. Jason Tatum, did he miss that game? Was it against the Miami Heat? Whatever game Jason Tatum missed last week, 2 weeks ago, Jaylen Brown was the focal point of that game. And we know what he can do with Jason Tatum out of the lineup.
Right.
Yet, when Jason Tatum is in the lineup, he knows that I can take a step back. I know what I can do elsewhere. He's been a role player in this league. He's been relegated behind other players, and he knows his role on this team so well compared to so many other stars in the league where we see other teams. Does this star player know his role? Do these star players mesh together that don't work out? Oh, the star player shipped here. Oh, he signed somewhere else. And that's when dynasties fall apart. Or
Right.
what star players they think when they team up in a big three or a big two or whatever it is. Oh, we're going to get in here and we're going to form this dynasty, win multiple championships. Well, it doesn't work out because the stars don't know their roles.
Right.
Jaylen Brown knows his role
It was
on
his
the
role.
Celtics team, and that's honestly what makes the Celtics team so dangerous, not only this year, but years into the future where we're looking at it going, can we win back to back? We already won one last year. Can we win back to back? Can we win three in 3 years? That would be historic. First time since the Bulls. Can we win 3 in 4 years? Can we win even more after that with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? That's all on the table for them. Going to be very tough to do, of course. That's still very far out into the future, but the Celtics, they certainly have something special here with Jaylen Brown and of course Jason Tatum being added to that equation as well.
Without a doubt. And let's talk about you talk about dynasties and what makes them so special. Let's talk about this team's Kevin Durant, Kristaps Porzingis here right now. So this was Justin's pick for the Flowers of the game. So there's no fancy graphic, but we'll talk about Kristaps tonight. Under 30 minutes, right? Barely. By 22 seconds, he was under 30 minutes, but put up 22 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, so 4 stocks. Kind of a member of the stock exchange tonight there. 8 of 15 from the floor, 2 of 6 from behind the arc, plus 14 for KP. A good game for KP. It was nice to see him kind of get going. Something Randy talked about, Seamus, was getting Kristaps involved in the paint. We saw a lot of that tonight, a lot of that action, getting him on those mismatches. They attacked it. It worked. When we talk so much about how KP, right, is this Kevin Durant, but, and we've talked about a lot really since he's come back into the lineup, but tonight in particular, I want to talk about the defensive side of the ball and his impact, and his impacts, because Boston played a very sound and clean defensive game tonight. 2 steals, 2 blocks. What presence does KP bring defensively to the squad?
Well, Kristaps Porzingis, he's 7'3". I mean, we all thought when Robert Williams was traded away from this team, oh, there goes our interior defense. What's going to happen? Robert Williams, the high flyer who can block 3-point shots. He's blocking 3-point shots. He's blocking every layup attempt at the rim. He's really, if anybody on the perimeter, you think about the entirety of the Celtics on the perimeter, they are all locked down on the perimeter. Once anybody gets past those players, who's right there to meet him? Robert Williams. Oh no, he's gone. What are the Celtics ever going to do? They replace him with Kristaps Porzingis. That's what they're going to do, because Kristaps Porzingis, not only is he a lengthier player than Robert Williams, but he's also a little more agile, I would say, in his footwork than Robert Williams was. And I hate to compare these two players right now, but that's what we're really talking about with Kristaps Porzingis and his defensive ability. Is not only is he somebody that can deter shots around the rim, but he's somebody who can also really he can be on the perimeter and defend his own on the perimeter. And yes, he does have a couple of situations where teams like to really pull him out far. We saw against the Lakers in that game last year where the Lakers absolutely scorched the Celtics. What did they want to do? They wanted to pull Kristaps Porzingis as far away from the rim as humanly possible and potentially pull up in his face. And Kristaps Porzingis was almost playing the middle there, and Austin Reeves. It was all night, all night. We can see a couple of struggles there, here and there from Kristaps Porzingis, but for the most part, he's somebody that can defend both on the perimeter, hold his own because of his length and his footwork, but also just be a complete stalwart in the interior, on the interior for the Celtics, him blocking shots. And of course, blocks are not really that important in the NBA. It's really the deterrence of shots. You don't need one of the most famous Bill Russell quotes is him saying, "You don't need to block every single shot. You just need to make players think that you're going to block every single shot."
Right.
That's really what it is. And Kristaps Porzingis, when he's 7'3", standing there by the bucket, he's somebody that can deter all these shots. And not only that, he's a pretty heady player, in my opinion. I think he's one of the smarter interior guys in the NBA. Now, offensively, people can say, "Oh, he shoots too many threes. He should be more down in the post, whatever." But defensively, I think he's somebody that works very well with the rest of the Celtics and being that back line of defense for the Celtics when somebody's beat on the perimeter, which doesn't happen all that often. He is right there to clean up the works and also on the boards. Kristaps Porzingis, he's not the most physical player, but again, his length, his versatility in terms of grabbing rebounds, that's all big for the Celtics.
Right.
And that's why he really turns this Celtics team into an elite squad, because with any other big on this roster, the Celtics are still a very, very good team. And we talked about this. They're still one of the best teams in the entire NBA, and they can still win the finals as they proved last year with Kristaps Porzingis out for most of the playoffs. The Celtics can still win the finals without Kristaps Porzingis, but as you mentioned, he is our Kevin Durant. He puts the Celtics to another level at which teams just cannot match up with them. It's insane to see on a nightly basis. Honestly, the Chicago Bulls are one of those teams that have one of those players who can match up with them a little bit, Nikola Vucevic. And that's what made this matchup so interesting the last 2 games. Is last game I thought Nikola Vucevic got the best of Porzingis in a lot of moments where And yeah, we didn't quite take advantage of the mismatches with Kristaps Porzingis down on the interior. Nikola Vucevic kind of, even in the game, what was it, November 29th against the Bulls, he was completely scorching us that game. Nikola Vucevic had the best of us those games. Yet tonight, it was Kristaps Porzingis who I thought flipped the script a little bit. And yes, Nikola Vucevic had a good night, but he did not have near the nights we saw the last two games against the Chicago Bulls, where he's a legitimate problem. Tonight, it's on the other side. Oh, Kristaps Porzingis is a problem for the Bulls, and he's neutralizing Nikola Vucevic. Outside of the Chicago Bulls team, yeah, there are a couple other elite big ran teams. Think of the Nuggets. We talked about the Knicks with Karl Anthony Towns, but he's not as good defensively as everybody thinks, or I don't even know if people think he's good
I don't think people
defensively.
think that.
Yeah, I don't think people think that at all.
It was
But
nice of you, though. It was nice of you. Put that gesture up there for
offensively, he's
him.
an elite big,
He's
Karl
ridiculous.
Anthony Towns.
Right.
Defensively, very perplexing from that side
Yeah.
of the ball, in my opinion, his entire career. I don't know why. But against other big lead teams, Kristaps Porzingis is going to be crucial in the Celtics playoff run this year. And of course, just in the regular season, pulling out little wins here or there, because we kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, where the Celtics, they're not going to have a free ride to the number one seed this year as they did last year. The Cavaliers are sitting right there. Of course, the Celtics could say, yeah, we're good with the number two seed. That's fine. But I don't think that should be the mentality with this team. We want home court in the conference finals. We want home court the rest of the way in
Quick question.
the playoffs.
I think I asked this last year, too. If we're the 2 seed and we have a better record than the 1 seed in the West and we're playing them in the finals, do we get the home court or just go off seeding in your conference?
I believe it goes off of record, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so then, yeah, it's not that big
I'm
of a
not
deal.
sure. I'm
Okay.
not exactly sure on that end. I know at least in the East, of course, we would have home court, but
Right.
that's what we don't want to worry about, though. At the
Right.
end of the season, we want to go, oh, we want to have the best record in the league. We want the number one seed. We want to pull it out. And Kristaps Porzingis, he's going to be somebody who's not playing on some of these back to backs, as Al Horford isn't either. We're going to kind of be switching back and forth with them. It's funny because everybody attacks Joel Embiid for saying we were attacking Joel Embiid the other
Yeah.
night for saying he's not playing back to backs. This is what also makes
Don't
Kristaps
point
Porzingis
fingers
so
over
cool.
here. Don't
He
point
doesn't
fingers over
say
here.
it. He doesn't say it, but he's gonna do it. He's gonna do it, but he doesn't say it. And honestly, Kristaps Porzingis, though, if he's gonna play the rest of the season for the Celtics and be healthy, he's gonna be crucial in the Celtics pulling out a couple of extra games in order to go and grab that number one seed from the Cavaliers and have home court throughout the rest of the playoffs, because that can really be important later on in the season when you're talking about, oh, maybe a game seven occurs for the Celtics later on down the line. Hopefully we don't see that occurrence. Hopefully the Celtics can just blow through the playoffs like we saw last year. But if that does occur, we want it to be at the TD Garden.
Right.
And Kristaps Porzingis being in the lineup, being healthy, and helping the Celtics pull out some of these games, that's going to be very important. So Kristaps, very much the Kevin Durant of this Celtics team, and he just brings another level to this team that, quite frankly, when Kristaps Porzingis plays, when he does, because he's gonna not play on some nights, it really is just the epitome of the Celtics just having an embarrassment of riches. If we only had Horford, Tillman, Kata, Cornette, that would be completely fine. The rest of the team is awesome. Yet
Right.
we have Kristaps Porzingis, who was
Porzingis.
robbed of an All-Star appearance last year, mind you,
Yeah.
folks. Probably won't make it this year, missed 17 games at the beginning of the season, but he was robbed of an All-Star appearance last year. We have him at center. I mean, it's just I don't know how to even. I don't even
Dare
know
we
how to
say
put it into
it? Dare
words
we say it?
sometimes.
Bring the word back. Dare we mind boggle it? Dare we?
Oh no,
Is it?
1000%. It's mind-boggling, but
Oh, there it
in a
is. There it is.
mind-bogglingly good way. Because when Jalen Brown said it wasn't quite great again. Oh, actually, that reminds me. It was against the Bulls. We brought out mind-boggling. Was it not? It was November 1st, 2021.
I think we brought out mind boggling 20
We brought
plus
it out a
times.
million times, but
You could
Jalen
probably
Brown
go to every
brought it out
game that's
versus the Bulls the
we
first
brought
time.
that
So
out a
it's
lot.
perfect occasion to bring it on out here.
A little throwback vocab for you. I do want to say this about KP though. Kind of on the Celtics, they did a great job tonight. And I think this obviously Jalen Brown, cookies and cream, KP as well. They use those two guys really well in this, attacking the weak link. Boston has this really, really awesome luxury that no other team in the NBA has. Maybe Oklahoma City, where they don't have a weak link defensively. on the floor when their healthy five are playing. That was their thing last year was, okay, where's this team's weak link? How do we attack them? They haven't done that a lot. Tonight, they did that, and we see what happens. When you attack Ayo Dosunmu, who is 6'3", 200 pounds soaking wet in the paint, your good things are going to happen when you have 6'6", water bending, Aquaman Jaylen Brown in the paint against him and the unicorn. Good things happen. He's going to foul. We saw Kobe White got early 2 fouls, right? Really threw him off his game. So again, when you look at KP, you are so right. He is the Kevin Durant of this team, right? The KD, where he's just what takes the Celtics team from really good to almost unbeatable. And you have to use him right, though. I will say, because there are times, right, where he is standing out there shooting those threes, and you're thinking, all right, yeah, it's great. That's an aspect that makes him special. He stretches that defense out, but attack the weak link. There is a weak link almost on the floor at pretty much every second of every game. When you're playing an opposing team, you can find the mismatch, whether it's through Jason Tatum in his size or Drew Holiday or Jaylen Brown, right? You're going to be able to find that weak link. Tonight, they found that weak link, they attacked that weak link, and they looked like the 2024 NBA champions that we know them to be. So I really do think that's important when you look at Kristaps in the Celtics squad.
And even looking at the attempts tonight, I would point out too, the attempts are much more balanced for Kristaps because 6 3-point attempts, 9 attempts down inside the paint, and he was 6 of 9 from down low, 2 of 6 from 3, I believe he was 2 of 6, if I'm not mistaken, for tonight. Kristaps Porzingis, we've seen nights where he shoots more threes than twos, which is a theme of this.
You can't have that. You can't have that.
And that's 1,000% what you're talking about in terms of they need to utilize him. The Celtics, Joe Mazzulla's coaching staff, they need to utilize him correctly. And when they do, when they utilize Kristaps Porzingis correctly, that's when the Celtics are really, really at that level of unbeatable. Yet on nights where, oh, great, Kristaps Porzingis, he's shooting 12 threes and he's taking 6 attempts down in the interior. That's not going to do it. That's just not going to do it. And we saw that flip-flop tonight where 6 attempts from deep, 9 attempts from the interior. That's more of the balance we want to see with him because it's not as if Kristaps can't take and make can't take and make 3-point shots. It's just sometimes those attempts, he's settling for those attempts. He's only taking those attempts. Yet when you're 7'3", and like you're talking about with the mismatches, when you can find that weak link on the other team and exploit it, especially like we did tonight and what Randy was talking about doing the other night on Thursday, that's really when the Celtics are maximized. And I will say this about Kristaps Porzingis this year. Did miss the first 17 games. Shouldn't need to be integrated too much into this team because he did play with this same iteration of the Celtics last year. But I will say maybe some of that consistency does come off of he plays more consistently in terms of every other night, and the Celtics aren't playing back-to-backs and aren't playing 2 games in 11 days. Maybe some of that does come down the line more so than we're seeing right now. But tonight, I think, was a good sign regardless.
If you're the other team and you're rolling into Boston or Boston's rolling into your hometown, you're thinking to yourself, fingers crossed Boston settles tonight. Because that's when they're beatable, right? That is when Boston, and again, they've lost 6 games. Chicago was the first loss this season that wasn't inside 6 points. So that means even when Boston loses, there's a good chance they win. And that's really unique about this team, right? So it's like, again, don't give the opposing team, and it feels like, I'm not going to harp on it too much. I don't think it's a problem because last year in the playoffs, we saw this a little bit in the regular season too last year, where it's like there were some games where there were some bad losses last year. Some games, we took some bad shots. We, weren't attacking. We lose it. And then the playoffs roll around, and I don't think you saw that once, right? You never saw that from an offensive standpoint with this team. So I'm not really worried about that. However, again, developing good habits. You are chasing. You're currently the 2 seed, right? You're not 14 games ahead of the 2nd seed. The Oklahoma City Thunder look really good right now. You could see them in the finals. You never know. So, do the little things every night. And what that means and what that entails is that, play to your advantages. Don't give the teams a break by hucking up by putting 7'3" Kristaps Porzingis and having him shoot 8 threes, right? Put him in the paint sometimes, more of the times that he's not in the paint, right? Attack that weak link, get them frustrated. They're going to foul him. He's going to get to the line. It's going to open up the floor. And then guess what? Then you can barrage them from three once you open up that floor. So, I want to see them do that. And I think they will. And we have. So, again, it's like, I hate to sit here and criticize them on a 25-point win, right? Arguably one of the best wins of the season. But when you show out past couple weeks, kind of play sloppy, you do want to talk about it. You don't want to address it.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned it too, during the best moments of last season, or really the biggest moments of last season in the playoffs. We really think about that Dallas Mavericks series, Game 1, and when
Yeah.
Kristaps Porzingis was even able to play Game 5 and Game 2 in that series. They utilized him in that way in the finals, and we
Yeah.
saw in Game 1 last year, he was dominant against the Dallas Mavericks,
couldn't
just
stop him.
completely dominant. And I do think, too, you talked about the good habits of this team. It is vital, extremely important to build those good habits with this specific team, because you can let the championship get to your head a little bit. I know the Celtics team,
especially with this group, because we've seen them get complacent. Like, I hate to
Right.
bring it, right, but like, you build good habits because you don't want those guys to fall into that mental trap they've got.
It's like they held up the trophy last year. They've already done it. Plus, the competition this year, it has to be mentioned. It's
Much
going
better.
to be a tougher road this season than it was last year. Celtics received a lot of injury luck, and even last season, the opponents, they didn't have to play Milwaukee in the playoffs at all.
Yeah.
Cleveland was a lesser team. They didn't have to play New York
New York
in the playoffs
Yeah, New
at
York's probably
all.
the only one.
And you just look at all the teams in which they either didn't have to play or faced at a more relegated state from what they typically are. The Celtics received a lot of luck, and that's not taking away from their championship run. You play who you play, and those
Right.
other teams should be healthy. But this season, the league is tougher. It just is across the board. The Eastern Conference, I would say, is a little bit tougher. We're already seeing it in the standings. This time last year, the Celtics were blowing teams away
Right.
and running away with the number 1 seed. And in the Western Conference, we were going, oh, who's going to be at the top? Who's going to be at the top? Oh, is it the Clippers? Oh, is it the Nuggets? Timberwolves, Thunder? Who's going to be at the top? And it came down to the last day of the season last year. Yet this year, we're looking at it. Thunder are clearly up there as the number 1 seeds in the West. They were already the number 1 seed last year. The Mavericks made the finals last year. The Nuggets, they still have finals. They have a finals resume under their belt, and they still have that pedigree behind them. And in the East, the Celtics are chasing the Cavaliers right now for the number 1 seed. So we're already seeing it in the standings that there's more competition around us right now, around the Boston Celtics, that it's going to be very important for the Celtics to build those good habits, because I think the margin of error is a lot slimmer than it was last season.
I agree. That's such a good point. And that's kind of, and you mentioned this and it stuck with me. A couple post game. I want to say it was about 2 weeks ago. We're in a situation in this league where it changes so much on the fly now, right? You don't see units and cores, staying together for 4 years. We saw this offseason. People saw what Boston was doing and what they did, and they adapted quick to try to combat that, which is interesting, though, because Cleveland was actually one of the 3 teams, Cleveland, LA, and Boston, to not make any roster moves. So believe it or not, Cleveland actually didn't adapt. They rolled with their core, and it's working out for them. But no, I agree. The competition, again, it can change overnight with an injury. But where we stand, assuming everyone's healthy and what it could look like, the framework of the playoffs, the competition is going to be much, much harder. It's going to be this championship run, if Boston can pull it off, is going to be way harder, right? What the Celtics have in tell for them, they're playing in some game 6s and 7s this year, right? I think that's fair to say that. It'll be funny if we can roll back on this in June and it doesn't happen, and we'd be like, look at Robbie.
Like, but, we actually swept the whole playoffs.
Yeah, so it's so early. You never know. We're only 3 games into Rob's 25 rule. But again, the way it's working out, the way it's coming, it does appear it's going to be tougher. I do want to touch base before we close off this show on the Orlando matchup that we have coming up Monday. Orlando's been playing some great ball, but they've just gotten so unlucky this year. However, even without Paulo and Franz now, they're a tough team. They got some really good defensive guards. We're going to be on the road. Going from Chicago down to or Orlando's is a long flight, Seamus. So, you look at this matchup, what do you want to see? from Boston in or against this matchup against Orlando before Christmas, before they come home for Christmas.
Well, yeah, we've talked about it. This team cannot be complacent in this matchup because the Orlando Magic, even without Franz Wagner, even without Paulo Banchero, and this is what really kind of puts a damper in this matchup that those two players aren't playing. But regardless, we've seen teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder the other night. They've had to go into post game. Jalen Williams explains to the media, "Look, this Orlando Magic team, they're missing their two best players and their two young stars, but they play hard and they play together as a unit. And Jamal Mosley
There it
knows
is.
the
I was waiting
identity.
for it. I was waiting for it. There's the
They
Jamal Mosley
he
shutout.
is. Did he win Coach of the Year? Like I don't even
No,
remember
he
who
was a
won Coach.
candidate though. He was
Okay, yeah, he was in the top three for sure. He is one of the best coaches in the league, and he has formed an identity and a culture in Orlando that that team desperately needed, coming off of last decade where they were the perennial 7 to 13 seed essentially.
Yeah,
They
with
have this
Vooch.
young core,
Yeah.
and with young cores, it's not always a given. We see in Charlotte, Charlotte has a young core. It seems like every year where people are going, "Oh, look at this guy." Well, look, they can't win games at all because they don't have an identity
There's
in
no
how they
culture.
play. And it seems like they play a different way every single night. And yet that's what's happened in Orlando is the building of the culture, the building of the identity. Last year, they took Cleveland to a game 7 on the road as a fifth seed, completely overblew expectations. And this year, the Orlando Magic held some expectations this year coming in, but some of those have dwindled down a little bit because of the injuries, the oblique injuries. I don't know what's going on with their training staff, what kind of workouts they're making Paulo and Franz do. They're both tearing their obliques.
Yeah.
But regardless, the rest of the team is right there to clean up the mess. And we have guys like Jalen Suggs. I really think he is their Marcus Smart type of player. Probably
Yeah.
more efficient than Marcus Smart, I
Yeah.
would say, as an offensive player, but defensively, just complete guard dog. And his energy. I don't know if you watched the Knicks game the other night between
Yep.
them. Oh my goodness, he was spectacular
He was
defensively
yes,
in
yes.
that game. And
Underrated player.
he is going to be a player that's going to show up for the Celtics matchup because he's the type of player that goes, look, this is the defending champion Boston
Yep.
Celtics, pretty much the same team. We're going to face them. We're relegated. Everybody thinks that, oh, this Orlando Magic team, they're nothing without Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero. Well, they've proven that that's not exactly the case whatsoever. Jalen Suggs has a lot to do with that. And I think he's going to be that catalyst when we see the Orlando Magic 2 days before Christmas, mind you, too. That's also going to be a reason why the Celtics can't be complacent. They can't be thinking ahead to their Christmas Day matchup. They can't be thinking ahead to the family holidays on Christmas Eve. And oh, we're only playing the Sixers. And that's really, I'm going to add them into this conversation too. The Sixers and the Magic, the Celtics cannot be thinking these two teams, oh, Magic without Boncaro and Wagner. Oh, the Sixers without Embiid or Paul George or whoever's going to be on the floor for the Sixers. We never quite know.
Right.
They can't be thinking, oh, these two teams are we can just roll past them. They have to play hard. The Celtics have to play hard because the Orlando Magic aren't going to look at the Celtics with a target on the Celtics back going, we want to beat that team. That's the team
Right.
we're going to have to beat if we're going to be the top of the conference in later years from now, or even if they're looking at it this year. I think young teams, they always think irrationally. Young teams, they believe that they can go anywhere. They're always playing with house money. They don't hold all of these expectations of being of being the best team in the league or winning the finals every single year. So they have that irrational confidence in terms of, look, we can beat these teams if we play hard, we play our game, we play towards our identity, and we shut down what they do best. We can beat them, and that's what the Orlando Magic are going to think with the Boston Celtics. And even without Boncaro and Wagner, they're a dangerous team. Not the Orlando, starts with the same O. The Oklahoma City Thunder the other night,
Mm-hmm.
they found out in the wrong way. They
Right.
completely found out. And the Celtics, they don't want to find out. They should already look at that game the other night and go, look, the Orlando Magic, they're tough. We have to bring our A game like they did here against the Chicago Bulls. And I think this little 2 game stretch was a nice little, for a veteran team, maybe there aren't too many lessons in the NBA, but this is kind of a lesson where if you don't play your game, even at home, a team like the Chicago Bulls, who you think we're way better than, can certainly beat you down the stretch. And of course, the Celtics woke up to that point tonight, came out with a dominant victory, and hopefully going ahead against the Orlando Magic and even the Philadelphia 76ers. Some of that rolls over into those two teams who the Celtics should beat, but they shouldn't walk in with the expectations of they're going to just kick back their feet and win these games. They have to come and play like they did tonight.
This is a great opportunity from Boston, I think, to jumpstart a little run here. Boston's been good. They've been very good, right? 22-6 now, I believe. They've been very good. But, I'm still waiting on that little I want that 8-gamer, right? That 9-gamer, that 10-gamer. This is a great opportunity to start against Orlando. You got Orlando and then Philly and then Indiana twice and then Toronto. Very winnable games there. And then you got Minnesota and Houston and Oklahoma, then Denver. So you go out on that West Coast trip. So leading up to that West Coast trip, you have a really good opportunity here to get those habits down, play some good ball on some weaker opponents. Right. Do the little things, develop those habits. As for Orlando, I agree. Jalen Suggs is a dog. You got to watch out for him. They got I love their big men with Wagner, the Mo Wagner and Wendell Carter. I'm a big fan of those.
Celtic. Mo Wagner.
I know, former C. And then I'm a big Jonathan Isaac guy. I think offensively he's a wreck, but I think he's versatile on the defensive.
Imagine we drafted him over Tatum. My goodness.
Yeah, God.
Oof, that was a conversation.
Thank God.
Think about that a lot.
I was a Justice Winslow. Was he that draft or Justin Jackson? One of the two, I forget. Was it Justin Jackson? I think it was Justin Jackson. Justin Winslow was Justin Winslow was the year prior.
Yeah,
a
couple of years.
But so a great opportunity here against Orlando. But we've reached our time here, guys. But I will say this: the Celtics will face off against the Orlando Magic on the road. That will be Monday, December 23rd, right before they tip off against the Philadelphia 76ers at home on Christmas. That game, it will be at 7 p.m. Eastern time tip-off. Guys, after that final buzzer sounds, come right back here to the Celtics Talk Weekly postgame show, and we are going to have you covered for CTW Postgame Live after the final buzzer. Guys, thank you so much. We're approaching midnight here. I just want to say I'm kind of tempted to wait because I want to do that shift. But guys, thank you so much for joining us, watching with us tonight. Again, the Celtics picked up a big time win against the Chicago Bulls, 123-98. They bounced back and beat Chicago after falling to them Thursday night at home. Jason Tatum, he was your player spotlight, 43 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists, a historic performance from JT, guys. I'm Rob. You got something.
Wait. I can lead us till midnight. We didn't show the lead tracker, I don't think, tonight.
No, we did.
Oh, we did?
We did.
The full green? All of it?
The full green. Should we throw it up again?
No, we did. You're right. We did.
We can throw it up again.
We didn't show it last game. No, you're right. Sorry, I was trying to get us to midnight.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, let's end the show. Let's end the show. While we're at it, let's cue the music with this up.
Oh, yes. That's what we want to see.
Thank you guys so much for joining and watching with us, guys. See you next time.